Welcome to the show. I am so over the moon excited because today I am sharing my friend and the Autistic Art Club founder and hostess with the super mostest, Zoe McCormack. I am super excited to have her. She has created the most beautiful, special, and truly unique spaces called the Autistic Art Club. I'm in it. I am like, I told her I'm the number one fan. I'm always running around inviting people all over the place to come join us because it is so amazing. She has put so much of her talents, her time, and her heart into this. Guys, welcome to the show. I want you to meet Zoe McCormack. Welcome to the Mind Your Autistic Brain talk show, the talk show for late identified autistics, where each week you will hear the autism journey of another late identified person, including the hardest part, the best part, and insights they share just for you. So you know you are not alone on this journey, my friend. Find your person and community here each week. And don't miss these special editions of Creator Spotlight and Hot Topic with your hostess with the mostest, Social Autie. That's me, Carol Jean. Let's get started. Zoe, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for saying yes, because I know sometimes we've got busy lives and spoon allotments. So I'm super excited that you're here. Zoe, share with everybody what the art club is. How did it come about? What was this beautiful, amazing idea that you had that came to life?
So I guess when I first got diagnosed with autism, I was really looking for some sort of peer community supports. And there was some Facebook groups here and there, but I felt like there was nothing really that I was particularly looking for. And then kind of at the same time, I was attending different support groups for my mental health. So I would have been going to recovery based peer support groups for my mental health. And I felt like there was the autism stuff and my mental health stuff. And I feel like there was nothing that kind of brought the two together. And so I guess then I just decided to set up the Facebook group, the Autistic Art Club, where people who have autism or autistic art can join the Facebook group. And that was grand, and it was growing and growing. And then I just felt like I really wanted to meet these people somehow. And I don't have a background in art at all. I just really love art, and it's really helped me in kind of my own recovery and just managing kind of my life. I just feel like it really helps me. So I just decided to run a pilot kind of 4 weeks. I just came up with really easy activities and kind of just see who would come. And loads of people came. So so it's kind of just been going since then. And I mean, a lot of the people who come have been there from the very first one, including yourself. I think you came to the very first one too. And I suppose it really is just a passion thing for me. I'm not an art teacher, I'm not an artist, I have absolutely no art training. So I just kind of use different ideas that I've come across, or things that I think would be cool for us to try, and go with that. I feel like with the art club, the art is nearly kind of secondary to it, in what happens in the art club. It's really just about coming along, meeting other autistic adults, and just ranting about our lives, or not, or just having your mic and camera off and just listening to everyone. I feel like the art is a really good way for us to meet, because the pressure is off. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. You can talk for the whole time if you want. So it's kind of, I feel like it's become very much like a peer support group for autistics that kind of incorporates art into it.
It totally has. And I think that's one of the things that's made Saturdays so special to me, is because, for those 4 weeks, I'm I get just to go hang out with my friends and create stuff, because I don't always have time during the week, or I do have time, I don't choose to make time. There's a difference. I don't always choose to allocate my time in that way. Although I love it, and it's one of the things that really restores me. But it's also the restoration of the connection with my now group of friends, because I've made new friends, and it's a global community, which is really, really fantastic. Because you're in Ireland, I'm in the United States. There's people from
Yeah.
all over that join
Yeah.
us, and it's just really fun to not only create some really neat projects and share it, but what I love is just seeing how each person approaches a particular subject or topic. I mean, when we did like just the bees, or just when we just do anything, I mean, just to see how each person approaches it with different materials, different medium, what people choose to focus on, like for the detail. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
really incredible to me. I just love seeing all the things that come about at the end, but it's the conversations that happen in between that are just so amazing.
Yeah, and I think the special thing as well is like you don't have to be an artist to come along. Like so many people come along who haven't picked up a pencil since they were in school. Like it's not, we have people who are professional artists, but we also have people who like aren't or like who only do art at the Autistic Art Club.
Yeah,
That's what
like
I
me.
love about it. Yeah.
It is. It is fantastic, and that's what I love too. Is that it's structured in a way that like is truly speaks to my spoon allocation. It's like, okay, here's 4 weeks, and we're going to take 2 weeks off, and we'll do 4 weeks, and we'll take 2 weeks off, because everybody needs that break. Everybody needs that downtime to not have, even if you love and enjoy something, just the obligation of it sometimes is like stressful. For me, I don't know about anybody else. I think it must be
Yeah.
you too, because you were pretty smart about thinking through that. But it's just so wonderful. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I have always been just a huge proponent for speaking out to say everyone is an artist in some way. We are all creating, not just in paint or pencil, but in food, in clothing, in the way that we arrange our bookshelves. Everything that we do in our life in some way, in some aspect, we are designing, arranging, being intentional about curating the visual or even the tactile. I mean, if you collect squishies and you love the way different things feel, you're an artist. You've just created this tactile experience. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have just this very narrow definition of what art is, you're really missing the creative rest in your life, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes I think the way kind of art is introduced to us kind of probably puts us off as adults. Like it's, when you do art in school, like you're graded on it and stuff. Like I think that kind of makes us have a very like, oh, I can't do that because like you have to be good at art to do art. But like I never did art until last year. So, and like I found, it's one of those things, the more you do it, like the better you're gonna get. It's not nobody just it does photorealism on their first go. um you know
Exactly.
um yeah.
And and that's the thing too. I love about how you have sort of set up this container, this vessel of just come in, just enjoy it, just try it, do it the way you want to do it. You don't have you want to share it, great. If you don't want to share it, that's okay. Because you've approached it, or I feel like you've approached it in the way that is just, hey, this is just for you to come and just be you. Just connect with a part of you that maybe you haven't been connecting with for a while, or just come have fun, or just you don't even have to have fun. You just come up and be. You could just show up and
Yeah.
be. You don't
Yeah.
have to turn your camera on. You don't have to turn your mic on. You don't ever have to say anything. You don't have to engage. But if you just want to hang back, that's cool too. And I
Yeah.
think that's so important, because we really do. We had this internal judge where it's like, yeah, my stuff doesn't look nearly as good as their stuff does, or I'm not very talented, I'm not very creative, because that's not what this is about, really. Like you started with, it was like, how do I take my mental health? How do I take my need for expression or expressing myself or my feelings? How do I bring that together? And really, that's what this does. This gives this amazing place to just come and sort of have some time together, have some connection, have some expression of yourself in whatever way that works for you. And it's mental health. It is.
Yeah. And I think kind of my main ethos kind of with setting it up is that it's like includes as many people as possible. So like I know we have like we go on the Zoom and we do the Zoom. Like some people have their camera off, some people have their mic off, some people just chat through the chat or whatever. But then there's other people who like find the idea of a Zoom absolutely terrifying. And so I always kind of set it up in a way that they can still participate without going to the Zoom. And I always kind of try and explain as much as possible as to like how it kind of runs. Because like there are kind of a good few people that would have kind of like emailed me like what they did. And then like there have been some people who did that for a few weeks and then they came to a Zoom, like, so it's just, I think it's really done in a way that works for autistic people, in that, there's not just one way that we do things. Like we're like, I don't even know how I'm doing it because I'm so anxious myself. Like when I go to other Zoom meetings, I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to say anything. So like, I don't even know how I'm doing it, but I feel like so many people get benefit from it that I just feel like, okay, this is something that has to continue. And yeah, I guess like for anyone who like would like to come but wants to do it in a different way, like I'm always open to kind of like shifting things around or having people engage in whatever way that they feel they can.
I think that's so great. And I noticed that and I liked that. And that was one of the things I'd even shared with several of my friends that are just like, yeah, I don't do Zoom, Carol Jane. I don't do Zoom. I'm like, yeah, but the really cool thing is Zoe does like this little blog article that she sends out on Friday, and it's got all the stuff laid out. And you can just get that. You don't have to go to the Zoom. You don't have to people
Yeah.
it if you don't want to people. If you don't want to people, you don't have to. And, I'm always telling everybody, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. Nobody can make you do anything but you. And you don't have to. And I love that because you really do. And you reach out and you're just like, hey, if you just want to email me your stuff, you don't even have to share it in the Facebook group. You don't have to post it on Instagram. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to participate and sort of have something to kind of guide your art, because sometimes having those prompts just sort of frees you from having to like make a decision on that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, here's an activity you could do, and if you want to do it, do it. And I think, like, I suppose I've had other kind of groups reach out to me and ask me how I'm making it so inclusive. And I'm like, when you run an event, you can't just have one way that people can engage with the event. You need to have several different ways. You can't, like, so many events are just like, here, you go to this and that's it. But even I know people have asked me if I will do like YouTube videos of instructions, which I plan to do in the future, but I just need to get like the proper equipment and all of that. But yeah, I think that's kind of a key point when we're putting on events, is to have think about several different ways that you can access people through that event.
That's really important. And I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes an autistic-led autistic event versus a non-autistic-led autistic event. It's just like, that's one of the things that I'm try to be so aware of in Mind Your Autistic Brain. I started the blog and and my friend Becca is helping me do transcriptions of the talk show because that's what people needed. That's what people in the community had asked for. And we all have our own communication styles or preferences. And the thing is that they vary. They are a wide variance. And also it's just about your comfort level to engage in things. And it's like, you made a really good point earlier that you're you're anxious and you're not necessarily comfortable, and you're like, how in the world am I doing the Zoom? Why am I doing this? This is not the most comfortable thing in the world for me. But it's the why. It's your why behind that makes the difference. Just like for me, I'm like, I don't want to have to get on camera all the time. I don't want to have to go talk to lots of people. I mean, I love to talk. I love to visit, but I don't want to do it all the time. It drains me. I'm exhausted. But when I look at, I don't necessarily always have time to want to sit down and intentionally write something. Some days it's hard to just get my thoughts and my words. Other days it's easier to, talk on camera. Other days it's easier to write. It's never a consistency. Thank you very much to the hot mess in the handbag that I am. But it's the why. We do things because we know it has a greater purpose, and it's not about serving ourselves. It's about serving and being of service to other people. And you do that. You do that, Zoe.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's what really keeps me going is that other people like need it as well and like benefit from it so much. And like even when I take like the 2-week breaks, I always feel so guilty. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna be like, what am I gonna do on Saturday? But like I need to set it up that way so that I have a break and that like I get to like, okay, I don't have to do Zoom this week.
Okay,
and
so don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty, because the rest of us are like, oh, I can't wait till 2 weeks, but right now I need the weekend. I need this break. So don't feel bad. You need a break. We do too.
Okay.
We're with you. We're with you.
Yeah.
So Zoe, what is your autism story? How did autism come into your life and your world? How did you learn that, hey, autism might be me?
I guess my story, I feel like it's very kind of unique. In ways, like, so I spent like 10 years in and out of mental health services being diagnosed with like everything. And the treatments just never really, they might have treated like one aspect of an issue that I was having, but never really fully kind of explained why, I really struggled in school. I left school early with like no qualifications. I moved to London when I was 16 and was like, okay, this is going to be my life now. And like, there's been really drastic things that's happened in my life and I could never really figure out like why. And so then last year, I had spent 3 months in a psych ward, like really, really depressed, suicidal, everything else. And when I came out, I got this psychologist, this clinical psychologist, and I wasn't really sure even what to talk to her about. I had no idea how to be in the room. And then after a few sessions, she was like, I think you might have some sort of social communication issues. And I was like, okay, she never mentioned autism, but like I Googled it as soon as I got home and like autism is what comes up. So it was then when I was started to think, oh, okay, she thinks I might be autistic. So I went through the assessment and like, yeah, I came up really high on kind of all of the like tests and everything else. So, and like she had to like speak to my mom about like myself growing up and everything like that. And like my mom was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, okay. So yeah, it kind of happened that way. I was just really lucky that I was assigned a psychologist who happens to work with autistic teenagers in her other job. So I was just really lucky that she flagged it because I wasn't self-diagnosed. I had learned about autism in college, but I had never thought of myself as autistic ever before that. So I guess once that happened, then I really started to, I suppose, like I feel like diagnosis gives you like a little toolkit on like how to kind of manage different things that you're struggling with. And I felt like then by like looking at my sensory needs and that kind of thing, which I'd never looked at before, really helped me manage my kind of overwhelm and like I had this kind of pattern of like loads of production, really, really productive, and then a crash, and then really productive again, and then a crash. So I feel like that kind of really helped me figure out like to how to prevent those crashes. And I think with my mental health has been pretty okay, like kind of since then, since I've been kind of working on my sensory kind of, I suppose, my sensory health. Um, so yeah, it kind of happens that way, kind of through crisis.
So many of us come to it that way, Zoe. You're
Mm,
not alone. So
mm,
many of us come to it through major burnouts, through, attempts at suicide or just real
mm,
hardcore ideation. That's just
mm,
that you're just sucked down into that mudslide where you just can't seem to get going. And just like the more you
mm,
try, the more stuck and covered in muck you get. And it's just feels really overwhelming. And at that point, sometimes it's just like for the first time, you say, hey, something's not right. I've been holding this in for like 40 years. Could somebody help me, please? And it's
yeah,
finally at that point that you get an answer. You get some causation for why. It's been so flippin' hard and
yeah.
exhausting.
Yeah, I know, because I felt like my kind of little narrative about me in my head was like, you're like a half person. You are like, there's something about you that's just, this world is just difficult. And I could never quite figure out why that was. So it was like, why did I struggle so much at school? Like, I was good at school, but like, I would just refuse to do things for like a really logical reason. And like my psychologist was like, yeah, it's because you're autistic. You had this like overly logical explanations for things at like 14. Um, and like, I never understood why I couldn't just like go with the grain and just like, just do the things you're expected to do. Um, like it just never made sense to me why I was like that. So like then when I got my autism diagnosis, I was able to like completely reframe everything. It's like you're not just like a bad, like bold, bad behaved child, you literally have another way of thinking that nobody knew you had. So like yeah, it made so much more sense for me afterwards.
So, Zoe, if you had to reflect back over your autism journey to this point, for you, what has been the hardest part or the biggest challenge?
Um, I'd say just the mental health crisis that I had, like, from about 14 years old. Like, I've attempted suicide maybe like 15 times. I was like I've had really bad periods of suicidality. Like on my last one, I was suicidal, like actively suicidal for 9 months. Um, and like those periods were just so tough. Just feeling so low and not knowing why and not even knowing how to come out of it. And I suppose like looking back, when I'm in those periods and putting me into a psychiatric ward, which are very unpredictable, they're very loud, there's lots of alarms going off all the time, there's lots of people. It's like I can see now how that would actually make me worse, not better, because um, just the whole sensory environment of a hospital is not ideal. Um, and just I suppose, yeah, the hardest thing and like the loneliness of it. Like I went through my whole college degree and I didn't make any friends, and I wasn't really sure why. So just the kind of loneliness of like, why do I struggle so much? Um, and not having the answers.
Zoe, I know that you have a background in policy.
Mm, I do.
So having gone through that experience, and I know you wrote a beautiful article about your experience in the Irish mental health care system, and some of the
Mm,
experiences that you had were not positive.
yeah.
You had some really positive and helpful, beneficial things, like your identification that came out of that, but you also had some pretty tough experiences. So my curiosity is, because I know your heart And I know that you are really one to speak out and want to help change the way things are. With that background in policy and reform, what would you like to see change with how the mental health care system operates, especially when it comes to people with sensory differences and sensory challenges? Because that truly
Yeah.
is one of the hardest things is you need help, yet you're put into an environment that is probably the most toxic sensory environment that does not aid in your recovery. What are some of your thoughts on that? I would love to know.
Yeah. I guess like that's kind of two questions, because there's like what I would like the mental health system to look like, but then also autistic people in the mental health system as it exists right now. So I suppose like autism, like my psychiatric nurse never learned about autism when she was in college. And I think so many of us, autism and mental health overlap so much that really there needs to be more education around that at their kind of college level. And like for kind of all of those professionals that would be in those spaces, like occupational therapists, psychiatric nurses, social workers, whatever. And that education not just needs to be about autistic children, but like autistic adults too, because the majority of them will be working with autistic adults. So that's kind of a key issue. And like I have a brilliant psychiatric nurse who works with me every week. She's never she doesn't know anything about autism. Like she's just trying to like educate herself as she goes along. And I think that's a big failure. And I think if we were to educate more of those staff around autism and around autistic women, autistic adults, I think a lot of us might be picked up quicker. Instead of going through these like massive crises and like and I mean the truth is that some of us don't make it through that point. So I think it's really, really important that the education starts when they're training. In terms of the mental health system, I suppose I would kind of be of more like I don't agree with any force or anything like that happening within the mental health system. I think that the patient's voice is the most important. And I experienced some things that were kind of forced on me in hospital, and I would be like very, very strongly against those things. So I think in terms of the mental health system, the patient's voice needs to be the primary decision maker in their care. And it's kind of messy. Like some patients have a care plan, some patients don't. Some patients are allowed outside for a walk. Some patients have never been offered or asked about the privilege. So I feel like it really depends on kind of who your doctor is, on what type of care you get. And so
Whoa,
there's
can we
no,
pause for a second?
yeah,
I want to pause for a second because you just said something that's just wow. The privilege to go outside.
yeah, yeah.
Is it really a
Um,
privilege to be able to
I
go
know.
outside? Like
Yeah,
but that is honestly the belief and the mentality in that situation is that it's a privilege for us to allow you to go outside instead of
yeah,
looking at it as that is really a necessary part for most humans to be able to go outside. Oh,
yeah,
Zoe, man, that just, whoo,
yeah. And I think
that
that's
right
the
there.
problem. Like with the way you're treated when you're in mental health care. Like before I was hospitalized the last time, I had spent 3 years on a degree learning all about health policy, learning about the doctor-patient relationship and the politics of that. And and I was learning all about like paternalism and healthcare and how, doctors will make decisions on the best of your behalf. And then when I was hospitalized myself, it felt like all of these things I could see them happening to me. Um, and, while I'm I feel like I may have been treated slightly better than other patients because obviously my education was known to my mental health team and everything. But I still very much felt like you can't say too much or you can't oppose too much. You have to kind of tread very carefully. And yeah, you're just you're not seen as like a human who's just trying their best. You're seen like I remember times where I had a self-harm episode in the hospital and the nurses will be like, now Zoe, you're in hospital, people in hospital don't do that. And it was really like, well, yeah, we do. That's kind of why we're here. And like you'd just be really talked to in a really condescending, patronizing way. And there's just, I speak a lot about just the lack of care that exists in mental health care because, if you were sick in say you broke your leg, the nurses would be so caring and so nice, like, oh, are you okay? How are you today? Whereas in psychiatric care, it's like nobody really asks you how you are unless it's to tick a box on a form, like it's just,
Missing
yeah,
humanity.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like they leave their humanity at the door and they walk in and they don't look at the person as a
No.
person. They look at them as a chart. They look at them
Mm,
as a problem to solve.
mm,
They look at them as a broken, flawed, or a person that isn't contributing to society. And that
yeah.
term really, oh, I've heard it used. It's like, oh, they're
Mm,
not contributing members of society. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, really. And when you say, I was in healthcare and healthcare, really? We just, it's like an oxymoron in the way that it's applied today because care is
yeah.
not part of it in so many aspects. It's like, sure, we're caring in some respects because that's what we agree to and that's what we think should be done. And it's, when you look at it, and you make such a good point, it's sometimes physicians and caregivers, and I use this word very loosely in this context,
Mm,
caregivers make decisions that they think are best for the patient because they are not asking the patient. They don't care. They have deemed the patient somehow incapable of, or that their opinion isn't valid enough to make their own decision or have input on what happens in their own lives. Because you weren't somehow strong enough to hold it together and not have a mental break. Somehow you are no longer valid and have the ability to make your own decisions. That just is, oh, it's such a broken system and we got to do something to fix it.
yeah. Yeah. And I guess they make decisions for you. They don't ask you. But it's very much like just part of the culture that exists.
Yeah.
Um, and their training. Like I've seen a research study recently that came to the conclusion that compassionate care after self-harm reduces the incidence of self-harm. And I was just like, do we really need a research study in 2021 telling nurses to be compassionate to their patients in emotional distress?
And yes, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there is this whole other side where they're researching how you can be very direct and not be overly compassionate or overly sensitive. And I have heard a nurse tell a patient after they had attempted suicide, she looked at the patient and said, "You have no right to your life if you're going to throw it away. You are wasting your life and you don't have the right to do that."
It's just,
The patient eventually said that that was the one thing that kept him from attempting suicide in the future because he kept thinking about how mean she was and how, she had said to him, you don't
Yeah.
have the right to waste your life. But it's like, where do we find the balance? Where do we find the balance between just being kind and being compassionate in our care,
Yeah.
and also just helping someone to heal and guide them to a better place? Because that's really all we're all looking for. I don't care what your neurotype is. I don't care what your ability or disability is. That's all we all are looking for. We're looking for love. We're looking for acceptance. We're looking for compassion and understanding and connection. And those are all things that are not a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like those values are completely missing from, our care systems. Even like the mental health system, the disability system, it's just all very paternalistic. It's all very formal, like you have to see a psychiatrist. If anyone's been to have an assessment with a psychiatrist, it's like sitting with a lawyer.
Boy, did you nail that one. It's like interrogation 101.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I
And
didn't feel like I was being attacked till I walked in your office. Dang. Thought I was supposed to
I
walk out of
know.
here feeling better.
And it's just like, I also feel like you're not going to get the most out of the patient that you want if you use these just box ticking methods. It just feels very, I don't know what the word is, but it just feels very like clinical and
Sterile. Yeah.
sterile. Yeah. And I always feel like you're probably going to get more from a patient if you just throw away that form and just sit down and just talk to them, look them in the eye, and just really find out. And like, I know there are certain health professionals that have done that with me over the years, and I will never forget them. Like, I'll always remember how they made me feel. Like, they made me feel heard, or they just talked to me about something random. They weren't like looking at me like I was like dirty or that I was like wasting their time. People who just really heard me and how difficult I was finding things. I feel like we need more of that.
I think we need more of that everywhere. I really do. I really do. We need more of that in every aspect of our lives. Zoe, I love that you approach it and really think about it, because that's one of the conversations that I've had with a friend of mine whose spouse is a physician. And in medical school, nothing is taught other than this one little section, not even a full chapter, about autism, what it is. And it is not even accurate. It is so outdated. It is so narrow in its scope. And if you go back to the training, the education portion of where are the medical professionals, what are they learning in the very beginning? What are they learning about neurotypes? What are they learning about how the diversity in neurotypes also impacts the physical body? Because those two things are directly connected, but it's not taught. Even
No.
in osteopathic medicine, even in osteopathic medical school, where you're learning more about treating a whole patient and not just the individual organ, like in a traditional medical school, it's still not taught to the degree in which it should be or could be. And some of those, after having worked in administration in a hospital, that is all a hospital is. It is nothing but tick boxes, following rules that the government sits down, or insurance companies are the bigger one. Insurance companies sit down and dictate what patient care and treatment looks like. And in my book, and one of the things that I am always speaking out, and trust me, I got in some really hot water speaking out in some of these meetings about how we were applying what was being dictated to us by insurance companies and the federal government on how we treated, how our care plans were set up for patients and for our staff to implement, because they were broken and they did not serve the greater good. They didn't serve the patient. They didn't serve the caregivers. They didn't serve the families. They didn't serve the hospitals. And so often, it always came down to, are we profitable?
Yeah, I mean, that's
And
the big
medical
thing,
schools
isn't
are
it?
the same. Yes,
Yeah.
medical schools are the same. They're not in it for the education. They're in it for the profit of it. They're in it for, how can we further our education dollars and how do we have an impact in the medical field with our students? It's not about how are we impacting people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really sad thing. I think because medicine is so inaccessible. I know here, like, it's really expensive. You have to study for years, and I feel like there's the wrong type of people involved in it. So, like, when we have like issues that are very much related to poverty and economic status, you have these physicians that really don't truly understand what it's like to be in that position. So yeah, totally understand. And I suppose on the kind of note of, all these forms that are just like dictated to us by somebody else, I'd love to see a care plan that is created by us, in that when you set up your care plan, like the patient, the autistic person, the mentally ill person decides what's going to be on that care plan and what's not on it and what is. Because I think that is the only true way we can have a true care plan. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm the only one who has to stick to the care plan. So, so often I was just like handed this piece of paper with like my goals on it that hadn't even been discussed with me. And it's just very tick boxy, like, yeah, that's done now. You know.
You see me grinning. I am just like, I'm busting over here because you are so, so right. Zoe McCormack, your task and your challenge, should you accept it, is that. Seriously. Seriously. I'm not kidding. You are the person to do it. You are the person to create that care plan, a real care plan, because think about it. An IEP that a parent and a child get in school, it's the same kind of care plan as the crap that they hand us when we're in a hospital. This is what I think your goals should be. This is going to get you to where you need to be. This is going to do this, this, and this for you. Yet you've now had absolute zero buy-in or input. Or if you did, it was really just so you could validate what they said you should do. It wasn't ever asking you. Because as I've learned, as I share in Mind Your Autistic Brain, if you don't have a why, if you haven't chosen your reason or purpose or your why for doing something, you have no driver. You have no motivation. You have no reason to do something. And you're going to hand me a care plan that I have had no participation or very little engagement or involvement in creating. And you want me to follow it and do it because that's what's going to be best for me, but you've never asked me what I want?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have been on
No.
a soapbox today. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. I will not
No.
apologize because this needs to be talked about.
Yeah. And I suppose I do talk a lot about that kind of stuff because I think unless you've been a patient in a psychiatric unit, especially an inpatient, you don't really realize how important like these things are. And like, that's just one example, like the care plan. And like, I was one of few patients that actually had a care plan. There were so many other patients that didn't even have a care plan. So it's just so ad hoc. And like, I had a care plan, but it was given to me. Whereas other people, maybe there was a care plan, they weren't even given it. I don't know. But there's just like these small little things that mean so much. And at the end of the day, like, it's your recovery, it's your life, it's what you need to work on. And I just feel like, you know, maybe it's easier for them to just write it up and then it's done. But really, to have proper, like, meaningful care means that I won't be coming back in like a month or two again in crisis. You know, there's things that we can do that really put the patient's voice at the center of their care. Um, and it means better health outcomes. So, yeah, stuff like that really annoys me.
All right. So since we're on the topic, let's just go deep. You ready? Because I know that you have thoughts on this one. Intake, patient intake, and how the humiliating, dehumanizing, stripping of everything that is you, your shoelaces, your belt. I mean, you can't even wear certain clothes, then you're left with just feeling horrible. You can't have anything, no personal items. Your family can't bring you certain things. You can only see your family on certain days at certain times. It is worse than prison.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah, that process is so, like,
That's
it's
traumatic.
humiliating. Yeah, it is traumatic. And you know, I've had conversations with someone I met in the psychiatric ward, and we often do wonder, like, were we causing ourselves more trauma by being in a psych ward? And I mean, like, I've been in a situation in psych ward where I didn't have any of my clothes. I had to wear a special gown. I didn't even have my own bra or socks. And I had to wear this for several days until, like I asked for the doctor, like, every day, like, can I get out of this now, please? And I had to beg for, like, my pajamas back. And like, that was just the most humiliating time for me. And, you know, I didn't want anyone coming in to see me in it. It's just really awful. And to be in, like, in a place where you're not familiar and you're just wearing this, like, horrible brown gown with, like, nothing else, and you're not allowed anything. It's not care. It's not care. It just
Oh my God, Zoe, this is awful. I mean,
yeah,
God,
I
you know,
know.
and the part that sucks, excuse me.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
think, you know, I do talk about that happening to me because um when I, like, left hospital, I was, like, researching, like, this protocol, and, like, there's nothing exists anywhere about it. It's called a refractory gown. Um and, like, there's just no information about it. And I feel like um it's not something that anyone is addressing. And just the trauma of, like, you have to be strip searched to get into it, by two nurses. And it's just, I don't see how that's care. Like, I'm sure there are, like, a whole range of so much better options for making sure that people are safe, without having to completely dehumanize them, um, strip search them, and, like, refuse access to, like, anything. Um, when they're kind of, you know, going through a really hard time. So, you know.
I can tell you that probably the hardest part is feeling so helpless, feeling like you have no say and no control, and you're looking for help. And in that help, you're being further traumatized. This is not care. This isn't
Yeah.
medicine. Medicine heals. The
Yeah.
corruption of what medicine should be is what we're faced with.
Yeah. I remember being so ashamed of it at the time. Like, I felt like, we call it the shame suit. Me and some of the girls I know who have been in it, we call it the
Right,
suit of
yes,
shame.
good term.
Um, But I remember even not telling other patients that were around me what it was. So like one patient, she was allowed out, and like she went to the shops and bought me pajamas because she just thought I had no clothes. And like I was just like I couldn't even tell her what like why I was in this thing. And it's so horrible because it just everyone can see you, and it's just like this suit of shame of like, look at her, she's suicidal, so she has to wear um this horrible thing. And I mean it's happened to me, and when I was in hospital I kind of became friends with a group of girls, and we're still friends now, and all of us who were in there for being suicidal were put into this thing at one stage or another. And so I just feel like it's a really common occurrence that nobody is talking about, and nobody knows about, because unless you're in there, you don't know what happens. And just really the trauma and just completely stripping away. Like before, even after you come in and you've been strip searched, your shoelaces are gone, the like ties in your hoodie are gone. You have to hand in your charger for your phone, everything else. But then for that to happen when you're in there, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to like prove yourself healthy enough to come out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they don't even talk about people don't even talk about this very often unless you've experienced it or you've been through it with yourself or a close family member.
Mm-hmm.
Then you also have that whole other layer of you have to navigate the space with other people, and you've got people who want to bully you because they're not in a very good, healthy place for themselves.
Yeah.
So then you're getting bullied or you're getting ostracized, you're getting picked on. You might find one or two friends because you're lucky enough to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough space because you have people here who are really low, really suicidal. You might have people who are going through some mania, so they're like super all over the place. And then you might have people who are, really struggling with hallucinations or voice hearing and that kind of thing. So you have all of these people in the same room trying to share the same space. So like as an autistic person who would be very sensitive to like other people's emotions and stuff, it's really, really difficult. And I was just really lucky that when I was there, three other girls around the same age as me, going through the exact same thing as me. So we just kind of clung on to each other. But I know other times when I've been admitted, I've been there and it's just been all these middle-aged men, and it's been really scary. And you're not sure, you're not sure if you feel totally safe in that environment because you don't know what other people have ended up there and stuff, so it can be quite terrifying. And yeah, I'm not sure if lumping everyone who's struggling with their mental health in some way, lumping us all in together in the same room is really can be defined as care, because
Chaos definitely would be the definition there.
And
Care
it is
versus chaos.
Yeah.
There you go. That's your first article, care versus chaos on the healthcare system. Oh,
yeah.
Zoe, thank you for sharing your experiences and thank you for sharing your insights on that.
No worries.
It's one of the things that needs more discussion from us.
Yeah.
It really does. And anything that you can do with the training and the resources and the knowledge and experience that you have will be greatly appreciated by the rest of us. I can tell you that. So cheering you on this side. So if those things have been really tough, what's been the best part? What's been the best part of this autism journey for you?
I think for me, it's been knowing that I'm not alone in the way I struggle, the things I struggle with. I suppose one part is like being able to look back on my life and maybe the things that made me feel like I was a bad person or whatever, or I was just acting up, or just being a bold child, and being able to reframe all of those things as, the misunderstood child, the child who was actually really stressed out, but nobody kind of knew how to deal with it. So being able to kind of reframe all of that so that I feel better about myself in general, and know that I was always just trying my best to get along. And sometimes maybe I did things or reacted to things in a way that was kind of misunderstood, and like that's okay. And then also, I suppose, I would have really struggled with friendships and keeping friendships and socializing, and kind of realizing that there's like a whole group of people out there who struggle in the exact same way that I do. And actually, when we socialize with each other, there aren't those challenges. It's easier. So I think for me, kind of knowing that there's like a whole group of people out there who are the exact same as me, and being able to just surround myself with lots of autistic people has been like the best thing for me.
I agree. It has been the best thing. And one of the best things of the best things is that you created a wonderful space for us to come together and be together as autistics in a very specific autistic space. So if you have one thing that you would like to share with someone who is just starting their autism journey today, they're just learning all this about themselves. What's the one thing you would like them to know as they begin their journey? Something that's really meant something to you?
Yeah, I think kind of that process of where you're looking back on your life, like maybe there's things that you've done in the past that, never really made sense, or things that made you feel like you're a bad person or a horrible person. And just taking the time to like go back and reflect on your life, reflect on the things that might have happened in childhood and adolescence that really say like, oh, that was definitely an autistic thing, and being able to just reframe the narrative of that, because I do feel like we do accumulate kind of a trauma from not knowing and not being understood. And I actually got EMDR therapy, and we went back and looked at different things that happened, and kind of reintegrated my opinion on what happened. And that was really beneficial to me. So I would say like go to trauma therapy. Trauma therapy isn't just for like really really extreme horrible things, but it also can be just that accumulated things that have happened because we were trying to live as neurotypicals, but we weren't. So I would say definitely kind of try and find a way to just reframe those narratives that you've built up. And if you want to go to trauma therapy, I definitely recommend EMDR.
So many people have had success with that, and that's such a big, it's a tool. It's just a tool that's going to help. And it's one of the things that really is where you have to, when you're reframing those things and you're looking at them with this new knowledge, when you look back at your life, the other part of that is also just the compassion and the forgiveness of yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Like, forgiving yourself. And I feel like it gave me so much compassion for myself, and to like think about, child Zoe, who was freaking out about wearing a car seat belt, and nobody was like, well, why is she suddenly refusing to wear a car seat belt? And I was like, but it's rubbing against my neck, I can't stand it. And or like just getting in, like really freaking out about just really like small things that I'd look around and like nobody else is freaking out. I couldn't understand why nobody else was really angry about certain things. But just taking the time to really just look back, because I think it really will give yourself just a sense of compassion for who you are and like how far you've come.
We are still here. We are still here. That is resilience. That is strength. That is survival of the greatest degree, my friend. Am I right?
Yeah. And
that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
That does. We are very courageous people. Zoe McCormack, founder of the Autistic Art Club. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your autism story. Thank you for sharing your beautiful gift to the autistic community and this beautiful autistic art space that happens on Saturdays,
Yeah.
4 cycles and 2 cycles off. And you can participate in many different ways. You don't have to just show up to a Zoom. And you can show up to Zoom, but you can do it any way that works for you. You can also just do it privately through email or through Zoe's blog. I'll have all the links in the show notes below. Zoe, you are an incredible human. You are a blessing in my life, not just on Saturdays, but every day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and having like proper discussions about real things. It's refreshing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and courageous in sharing your story and your experiences.
Yeah.
The more we do it, the more we start the conversation, the better it'll be for the next person.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hey, you're going to make a difference in this. I know. I know you will. If you are someone who likes to help people and share what has made a difference in your life, please share this talk show with a friend and on your social media accounts so that you can be the blessing in another late identified autistic's life. Be sure to tag me at Social Autie so I can personally say thank you. And to help keep the talk show ad-free, please consider becoming a one-time or recurring supporter through either Buy Me a Coffee or the Anchor podcast links in the show notes below. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you for being a listener, and thank you for adding your voice to our story.